June 19, 1966. The checkered flag falls at Le Mans. Ford has achieved the impossible, humiliating Ferrari on the world stage. But as three cars cross the line in a picture-perfect formation, the man who made it all possible isn't celebrating. He's being robbed. This isn't just a story of corporate triumph. It's a story of a calculated betrayal. Who was the brilliant, forgotten engineer behind Ford's legendary engine? What dark corporate secret stolen from a British garage made it all possible? And why was the best driver of a generation, Ken Miles, forced to surrender his crown? A decision that may have led to his tragic death just months later. The truth is more shocking than Hollywood ever showed. This is the untold story of power, passion, and deception at the heart of motorsport's most legendary rivalry. The insult and the answer. The year was 1963, and the world of motorsport belonged to one name, Ferrari. For years, the scarlet-red machines from Maranello had ruled Le Mans, conquering the grueling 24-hour endurance race with a mix of speed, elegance, and precision engineering. And across the Atlantic, in the heart of Detroit, one man watched from afar. Henry Ford II, grandson of the legendary founder, a man with power, wealth, and a restless ego. Ford wanted more than cars rolling off assembly lines. He wanted glory. He wanted immortality. To achieve it, he set his sights on acquiring Ferrari, a bold move meant to combine American muscle with Italian mastery. For months, his negotiators worked tirelessly hammering out the details of what would become a historic partnership. And then, just as the ink was about to dry, Enzo Ferrari delivered his crushing blow. The Commendatore, proud and uncompromising, refused to surrender control of his racing program. At the final meeting, Ferrari walked away, not quietly, but mocking Ford's vision. He dismissed the Americans as assembly line businessmen who could never understand the soul of racing. The rejection cut deep. In Detroit, Ford's boardroom went silent until Henry Ford II, his face flushed with fury, issued an order that would change racing history forever. Build me a car that will destroy Enzo Ferrari at Le Mans. This wasn't just about racing anymore. This was all-out automotive war. To lead his charge, Ford turned to a man as unorthodox as he was brilliant. Carroll Shelby, a former Le Mans champion turned maverick car builder from Texas, Shelby had the swagger of a cowboy, the instincts of a battlefield commander, and the insight of a mechanical wizard. Where Ford's world was filled with polished suits and corporate politics, Shelby's world was gasoline, grit, and speed. But Shelby knew something Ford didn't. A fast car wasn't enough. They needed a driver engineer, someone who didn't just drive machines but understood their heartbeat. That's when Shelby called on Ken Miles. Ken Miles, Ford's secret weapon. Ken wasn't Ford's kind of man. He was British, sharp-tongued and stubborn to the core. A war veteran with grease-stained hands and zero patience for bureaucracy. Executives hated him. Shelby loved him. Because Ken Miles wasn't just good, he was extraordinary. He could feel a car's flaws without touching a wrench. He could push machines past their limits and then tell you exactly why they failed. Together, Shelby and Miles became the spearhead of Ford's vengeance, the GT40 program. But the beginning was a nightmare. The first cars overheated, broke down, and crashed out of races. Ferrari laughed while Ford executives grew impatient. Yet in the chaos, Ken Miles's genius started shaping the machine into something deadly, something capable of rewriting history. By the end of this chapter, the stage was set. Ferrari stood unchallenged. Ford's pride burned brighter than ever, and in the shadows, a rebellious duo, Shelby and Miles, were building a weapon that would either bring Ferrari to its knees or destroy them trying: the beast and its heart. The initial GT40 was a disaster. It was fast but fragile, a deadly handful that broke down and crashed out of races. Ferrari laughed. Ford executives panicked. But in the chaos, Ken Miles' genius began to shine. He was the test pilot, the feedback loop, He'd come off the track and tell engineers exactly what was wrong, often fixing it himself. But the car needed more than tuning. It needed a heart. And that heart was being forged not in Detroit, but in a quiet English workshop. This is the story within the story, the Lola Connection. Before the GT40, there was the Lola MK6, designed by engineering visionary Eric Broadley. It was a revelation, a lightweight mid-engine monocoque chassis, a single piece of stressed metal that was years ahead of its time. Ford saw it, and they wanted it. They brought Broadley on board, funding his company, Ford Advanced Vehicles in England. The GT40's DNA, its sleek silhouette, its groundbreaking chassis, its very soul, was born from Broadley's Lola. But corporate America soon clashed with creative British genius. Ford demanded control. Broadley demanded independence. Within a year, he was sidelined, his revolutionary designs absorbed into the Ford machine. His name slowly erased from the official history. Now, they needed power. Ford's engineers, led by the brilliant Carroll Smith and Roy Lunn, turned to a beast of an engine, the 7.0L FE V8. But it was heavy and raw. It needed a maestro. That maestro was Carroll Shelby's team, including the legendary mechanic Charlie Agapio. They took the iron block monster and turned it into a racing icon. They redesigned the heads, the exhaust, the induction. But the mechanics and engineers who lived with this engine didn't call it by its factory code. In the garages, late at night, they gave it a nickname born of respect and fear. They called it the Sidewinder. Why? Because, like the venomous snake, it was brutally efficient and deadly if mishandled. But when tuned right, it had a vicious, unpredictable strike of power that could win races. Mechanics loved its raw potential but respected its ferocity. Driver Dan Gurney would later say of it, "It didn't sing like a Ferrari 512. It shouted. It was a sledgehammer, and in endurance racing, sometimes you need a sledgehammer." The rise of a racing legend. The early days of the GT40 program were chaos. Ford had the money, about $100 million in today's figures. Shelby had the passion, but the machine was a beast they couldn't tame. Engines overheated, gearboxes shattered. At Le Mans, Ford suffered spectacular humiliation, while Ferrari celebrated yet again. To the Ford executives in Detroit, this was a disaster. But to Ken Miles, it was only the beginning. Ken wasn't just a driver. He was an artist behind the wheel and an engineer in disguise. While others saw broken parts, he saw opportunity. While Ford's corporate engineers debated diagrams in conference rooms, Miles was in the garage, sleeves rolled up, dissecting the GT40 like a surgeon determined to bring a patient back to life. He understood the car not as bolts and metal, but as a living, breathing animal. And when he drove, it was pure poetry. Ken could feel the asphalt beneath him, sense the car's heartbeat, and dance on the edge where most men would crash. "No one drives like Ken," Carroll Shelby once said. "He talks to the car, and the damn thing talks back." Under Shelby's leadership and Miles's relentless pursuit of perfection, the GT40 evolved. Every failure became data. Every breakdown became progress. And then, in 1965, the world finally saw the storm Ford had been brewing. First came Daytona. The roar of engines shattered the Florida air as the GT40s took to the track. This time, there was no breakdown, no humiliation. There was dominance. Ken Miles drove like a man possessed, pushing the car beyond what anyone thought possible, and the GT40 crossed the line victorious. The Americans had arrived. Then came Sebring, another endurance test that separated men from machines. Once again, Miles was unstoppable. Lap after lap, his precision was surgical, his aggression unrelenting. By the end of the race, the GT40 stood atop the podium. Ford had proven they could win. But winning wasn't enough for Henry Ford II. He wanted Ferrari's crown at Le Mans, but as the GT40 grew faster, so did the tensions inside Ford. The executives in Detroit hated Ken's rebellious spirit. He wasn't polished. He wasn't corporate. He didn't fit the image of the clean-cut American hero Ford wanted to parade on magazine covers. Miles spoke his mind, cursed when things broke, and refused to follow orders blindly, a sin in the eyes of the suits. To Shelby, though, Ken was irreplaceable. Without him, the GT40 was just another failed project. With him, it was a weapon, a predator built for speed, endurance, and revenge. And Miles knew it. He pushed harder than ever, testing new innovations, shaving milliseconds off every lap, chasing a machine that could not just beat Ferrari, but destroy them. By the end of this act, Ken Miles had become Ford's secret weapon, the soul of the GT40. The stage was set for Le Mans 1966, where history would be written in blood, sweat, and gasoline. But in the shadows, forces within Ford were already plotting a move that would betray the very man who had made victory possible. The Lola Connection. Before the GT40 became Ford's mighty weapon against Ferrari, its heart was born far from Detroit in a quiet English workshop belonging to a man named Eric Broadley, a visionary engineer and founder of Lola Cars. Broadley was no ordinary car builder. He was an artist of speed, obsessed with lightness, balance, and efficiency. His creation, the Lola MK6, was a sleek, revolutionary sports car that whispered danger and promised dominance. In 1963, Broadley's MK6 turned heads across Europe. It was low, aerodynamic, and fast. A machine so ahead of its time that it caught the attention of Ford advanced vehicles. At that moment, Henry Ford II had one goal etched into his mind: crush Ferrari at Le Mans. But Ford engineers in America were struggling to build something competitive. They needed innovation. They needed genius. And so Ford came knocking on Broadley's door. At first, it seemed like a dream partnership. Ford poured money into the project, promising resources that a small British outfit like Lola could only dream of. Broadley, in turn, brought his designs, his expertise, and his revolutionary ideas. Together, they would build a machine capable of dethroning Enzo Ferrari. But this wasn't a partnership of equals. Behind the polished smiles and handshakes, Ford's corporate ambitions loomed like a shadow. Every Lola design sketch, every engineering solution, every aerodynamic innovation, Ford wanted it all. The GT40's DNA was carved directly from Broadley's Lola MK6. From its low-slung body to its mid-engine layout and lightweight monocoque chassis. What began as collaboration slowly turned into absorption. As Ford executives in Detroit tightened their grip, Broadley felt the walls closing in. His independence vanished under layers of bureaucracy and politics. While Carroll Shelby's American team pushed for bold, risk-taking innovations, Ford's executives wanted control, order, and corporate credit. Broadley, brilliant but stubborn, clashed with Ford's hierarchy again and again. Then came the turning point. After months of tension, Ford quietly sidelined Eric Broadley. His contributions, his designs, and his vision remained embedded in the GT40, but his name would vanish from Ford's grand narrative. Lola Cars faded from the project while Ford claimed the glory. The GT40 would carry the blue oval, not the Lola badge, into battle against Ferrari. Yet the truth is undeniable. Without Eric Broadley's Lola MK6, there would have been no GT40. It was Broadley's innovation that gave Ford the weapon they needed. But Ford wasn't interested in sharing the spotlight. They were building an empire, and empires are written by victors. By the time the GT40 roared to life, Broadley was gone, his role reduced to a footnote. But in the sleek lines of the car and its revolutionary engineering, his fingerprints remained. Ford had its machine, Shelby had his driver, Ken Miles had his chance at glory, and Ferrari was finally within reach. But in the shadows, the seeds of betrayal had already been planted, and at Le Mans 1966, they would bloom in the cruelest way imaginable. The betrayal at Le Mans. The summer of 1966 burned with a tension that could be felt in every garage, every pit lane, and every executive boardroom. After years of heartbreak, failures, and broken machines, the Ford GT40 was finally ready. The weapon was forged. The battlefield was set. The enemy was Ferrari. And at the tip of the spear stood Ken Miles, the stubborn, brilliant, fearless driver who had poured his blood, sweat, and soul into making the GT40 invincible. For Henry Ford II, this wasn't just a race, it was revenge. For Carroll Shelby, it was redemption. Proof that American grit and ingenuity could dominate the greatest stage in motorsport. And for Ken Miles, this was destiny. After years of being overlooked, doubted, and underestimated, he was ready to stand atop the racing world where he belonged. But destiny, as it turned out, had other plans. The race of a lifetime, the 24 hours of Le Mans, the ultimate test of endurance, 24 hours of speed, chaos, and survival on a track designed to break both machines and men. On June 18, 1966, as the engines roared and the flag dropped, 3 Ford GT40s thundered down the straight, chasing immortality. From the start, Ken Miles was untouchable. His instincts were razor sharp, his control absolute. While others pushed recklessly, Ken danced on the edge, balancing speed and precision with surgical mastery. Lap after lap, the crowd watched in awe as he carved through the competition. Ferrari, the once untouchable titan, was falling apart. One by one, their cars dropped out of the race, victims of mechanical failures and relentless pressure from Ford's relentless assault. As dawn broke over Le Mans, Ken Miles was leading comfortably, his victory all but certain. Inside the pits, Carroll Shelby smiled, knowing his gamble had paid off. Ford had built the fastest, most dominant machine in the world, and Ken Miles was about to etch his name into history. But somewhere above the pit lane in the polished executive suite, where Henry Ford II and his senior men gathered, another conversation was taking place, one that would change everything, the PR masterstroke. Ford wasn't just after Ferrari's crown. They wanted headlines, photos, and history books. A single GT40 crossing the finish line in triumph was good, but 3 GT40s side by side dominating Ferrari in one legendary image, that was priceless. And so the executives made a fateful decision. They ordered a staged 1-2-3 photo finish. The plan was simple. Ken Miles, who was leading by over 4 laps, would slow down in the final minutes of the race. The other 2 Ford GT40s, driven by Bruce McLaren and Ronnie Bucknam, would catch up, and together they would cross the line in perfect formation, delivering the most powerful victory image Ford's marketing department could dream of. But there was a problem. Le Mans' rules were brutal and precise. Ken Miles had started the race further down the grid than McLaren. Under the regulations, if both cars finished side by side, the car that had started further back, Bruce McLaren's, would be declared the official winner. Carroll Shelby fought for Ken. He argued with the executives, warned them of the consequences, begged them to let the man who had carried Ford's dream on his shoulders have his moment. But the suits didn't care. This wasn't about Miles. It wasn't even about racing anymore. This was about corporate glory. Shelby knew then that the trap was set and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The moment that broke him. With minutes left on the clock, Ken Miles got the message over the radio. Back off, slow down, wait for the others. At first, he resisted. He had earned this victory. Every sleepless night, every risky test run, every broken bone and burned hand, they were his. And now, when history was within his grasp, they wanted him to give it away for a photograph. But Miles was a team player. Against every instinct in his body, he obeyed. He eased off the throttle, watching his 4-lap lead evaporate as the other GT40s closed in behind him. As they rounded the final corner, the 3 Fords aligned perfectly, a wall of blue, white, and thunder rushing toward the checkered flag. Cameras flashed, the crowd roared. Ford had their picture-perfect victory. Then came the announcement. Bruce McLaren, not Ken Miles, was the official winner of the 1966 24 Hours of Le Mans. For a moment, the pit lane froze in silence, then confusion gave way to shock, and shock to fury. Carroll Shelby slammed his cap against the ground, his jaw clenched in disbelief. Ken Miles, meanwhile, just stood there, quiet, expressionless, his piercing blue eyes fixed on the scoreboard. The man who had built the GT40 with his own hands, who had led the race with unmatched dominance, who had given Ford their ultimate triumph, had been robbed. The fractures began to show. After Le Mans, the cracks in the team became impossible to hide. Shelby was furious with Ford's executives. Ken, usually sharp-tongued and fiery, grew quiet. He had spent his life proving doubters wrong, clawing his way into greatness, only to watch it all stolen in the final seconds. For Henry Ford II, the staged finish was a masterstroke of PR. For Ken Miles, it was a personal betrayal, one he would never recover from. Behind closed doors, whispers began circulating. Some said Ken was reckless, too outspoken, too difficult for Ford to showcase as their poster boy. Others claimed the executives had already decided before the race that he would never be the face of their victory. The corporate machine that had built him up had also crushed him beneath its weight. But Ken Miles didn't complain publicly. He smiled for the cameras, shook hands with McLaren, and congratulated the team. Inside, though, he was broken, the beginning of the end. In the weeks that followed, Ken threw himself back into testing Ford's next project, the J-Car, a faster, lighter, more dangerous evolution of the GT40. Some say he was trying to prove a point. Others believe he was searching for redemption after Le Mans. But fate had one final cruel twist left for him. Just 2 months after the betrayal at Le Mans, during a high-speed test at Riverside, Ken Miles's car crashed violently, flipping and bursting into flames. He was killed instantly. The man who had given Ford their greatest weapon, the man who should have stood atop the podium at Le Mans, never got his moment in the sun. And yet, his legend lived on. Among racers, engineers, and fans alike, Ken Miles became immortal. Not for the victory he lost, but for the heart, genius, and courage he gave to the sport. Ford had their photo, Ferrari had their defeat, but motorsport had something greater, the tragic story of a man who deserved everything and was given nothing. Legacy, loss, and lies. The sun was relentless over Riverside, California, on August 17, 1966. The air shimmered above the asphalt as Ken Miles prepared for another high-speed test in Ford's newest creation, the J-Car. Sleeker, lighter, and faster than the GT40, the J-Car was meant to be Ford's next great weapon, a machine designed to dominate the future of endurance racing. But for Ken, this wasn't about Ford's glory anymore. This was personal. After the crushing betrayal at Le Mans 1966, he carried a quiet weight, a lingering wound that no podium could heal. He'd been the architect of Ford's greatest triumph. Yet the world celebrated others while his name was buried beneath corporate headlines. And still, he came back because Ken Miles wasn't built to quit. As he slid into the low cockpit of the J-Car, fastening his belts, no one knew that this would be his final drive, the final lap. Ken pushed the J-Car to its limits, roaring past the straights at 200 mph, the engine screaming as if alive. But then, in a heartbeat, it all went wrong. At full speed, the car became unstable. The experimental aerodynamics failed. The J-Car lifted, flipped violently, and cartwheeled down the track in a storm of fire and shrapnel. By the time the dust settled, Ken Miles was gone. News spread quickly, but within Ford's walls, the silence was heavy, almost calculated. The engineers mourned. Carroll Shelby wept. Yet the executives, eager to keep the program alive, framed the tragedy as an unfortunate cost of progress. To them, the death of a man became just another line item in the pursuit of victory, the erased legacy. After his death, Ken's story faded into the background of Ford's racing empire. Official press releases celebrated the GT40 as a product of Ford's engineering brilliance, rarely mentioning the British-born driver whose genius had made it possible. The hidden truth was even more complex. Beneath Ford's polished narrative lay bitter rivalries, bruised egos, and buried secrets. The Lola Connection, the quiet engineering theft from Eric Broadley's MK6, and the political maneuvering inside Ford's upper ranks. All of it was swept under the rug. Ken Miles became a casualty not only of a crash, but of corporate storytelling. Decades later, history began to correct itself. Motorsport historians, racers, and fans unearthed the truth, telling the story Ford never wanted to highlight. That Ken Miles was the heart, soul, and mind behind the GT40's transformation from failure to glory. When Ford v Ferrari reignited global attention in 2019, a new generation finally learned his name. Miles was no longer just a test driver, he was the unsung hero of Ford's greatest racing victory. The man who dared to push machines and himself beyond their limits. Today, his legend stands taller than the corporate giants who once overshadowed him. Ken Miles may have been denied his lean victory, but his brilliance carved a place in history that no photo finish or PR campaign could erase. Because some victories aren't measured by trophies, they're measured by truth. But buried deep within Ford's archives, behind locked doors and forgotten files, whispers remain of decisions, rivalries, and secrets that even now have never been fully revealed. And the biggest question still lingers, echoing through racing history. Was Ken Miles' greatest battle on the track or behind closed doors? Catch you next time.